Greetings and welcome to Flavourful Eats. Today we have special guests close by, Paul
Bourget.
and Mary.
Spinosa.
Welcome. Both of them. Mary is a businesswoman right here, a resident of Acton for over 30 years or just about, and have two businesses, Theatre with a Twist and Bee Busters.
That's correct.
And I believe Paul helps too.
That's right.
Welcome.
Paul also works at iRobot as an engineer.
As an engineer, yes. So with that, we get started with our very festive meal.
Okay.
Starting off with a kale.
A kale and artichoke dip.
Right.
Shall we?
Great, yes.
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to do half of a recipe. So right here we have some kale.
Tuscan kale.
Tuscan kale. And this is about 2 cups worth chopped. You want to talk about why?
Well, so I like the Tuscan kale in that the texture is a little smoother and a little easier to cut and work with, because the curly kale is hard to get it very uniform. So
And it's also a little more tender than.
I think so.
And this is some artichoke hearts. If you want to grab the cream cheese. Want to chat about the artichoke hearts?
So they have marinated artichoke hearts. They have them in brine, but we prefer the very plain ones with just the water.
And then we drain the water and we chop it
And
up.
sometimes the artichokes come in oil, so you use the one in brine or water.
Right.
So
So we're gonna-
and now we're getting 3 ounces from an 8-ounce block. We're trying to get into 3 ounces. So from 3 ounces, we've already cut it down to 4. If you follow, we don't have to cut it all together. We just use the lines as our guide to show you that's how we do it. To get you go into crisscross to form 4 ounces, and then crisscross again, and you get 2 ounces, and then crisscross and you get 1 ounce. So, okay, he's doing it, I guess that's 1 ounce, right?
Right, that's the 1 ounce of the 2 ounce piece.
So if we could chop it up a little bit and put it in there, that would be lovely.
I'm gonna let you do that.
Okay. So we're going to just chop this up because we're going to mix it in
Okay, I
our...
think that's about your 3 ounces.
Here
Yeah,
and here?
yeah, that's the last of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to chop a little bit more just so we can spread it out a little bit. And then we have plain yogurt, a full measuring of the recipe as an entire container full. I made this the other day and it wasn't creamy enough, so if we added a little bit more, I'm sure it would be
Everything
fine.
would be fine, yes.
And we're
So
going
if you
to
want to
get...
put the 4 ounces, it'd be good too.
No,
That would be
let's
half
see,
of it.
let's see what it looks like after we
Okay.
mix it up. And we're going to take half of the yogurt because we're doing a half a recipe. And it's a little bit more than half. It calls for, I think, 6 ounces.
Yeah, I think, that's good.
And then a little bit of garlic. I think the recipe calls for a teaspoon. We're going to take a little bit and sprinkle in
Well,
there.
a recipe today we used is garlic powder, but we'll be using fresh garlic. Fresh is always best.
And we're just going to mix that up. And we are going to add some mozzarella cheese. Our oven is
Preheated at 400 degrees.
correct.
So this is a very nice twist in the regular artichoke dip, right? You have using kale, which is
You could add spinach to it.
normally you hear spinach and artichoke kale. Dip, right?
We were
But,
thinking of adding some of that, but we,
The thing about kale, it's actually a winter vegetable. It actually can be grown. You can harvest it at this time of year. So it's not. During fall, and it's easier to get. And
I'm
you're
gonna
adding half a cup of.
half a cup
mozzarella.
of mozzarella.
So it's all mixed together. And
We mix it all together. We're going to cook it in the oven for about 15 minutes. And then the last 5 minutes, we're going to take our cover off so that we can add a little bit more mozzarella to
Sprinkle
it.
more mozzarella and put it in.
And then make it nice and brown on the top. And then we'll serve that up later.
So you can see this is Mary's twist on the whole thing. She's Italian, so you can't do without cheese.
Absolutely.
A vegan can very much do this with vegan cheese. It's all available in our vegan cheese, vegan yogurt. Everything is good.
We're ready to go in the oven.
Just
All
3
right.
minutes.
Wonderful. Here
We'll
we
be
go.
right back. So now we're getting on with.
We're actually preparing the dessert ahead of time because it takes a little time to prepare. So this is a mixed nut and fruit brittle.
Right. I know our recipe says mixed nuts, but you can put just about anything. So let us know what you're putting in there.
Boy, what do we have? I have all the nuts that we had left over in our cabinet, basically. So, Paul, what do we have here?
Hazelnuts, almonds, peanuts, pepitas,
Craisins.
And craisins.
craisins, yeah.
So we just happen to have that in our cabinet.
We
So,
got our green and red
Right.
for festivity.
so that's our nuts. And in here we are going to use a candy thermometer.
So what we have is actually rice syrup, honey, vanilla essence.
A little
and
bit of water.
A little bit of water. And the honey has come up from her beehive business. We just cleared the beehive, and that's what we're using today.
Paul and I spent last weekend rendering our honeybee hives to give us some honey for the season. So this is our rice syrup.
So a trick to rice syrup or any syrup is to put a little bit of, grease the cup or the measuring whatever you're using, and the syrup will fall right out. You don't have to use a spatula or anything. So the recipe asks for light corn syrup, and I don't particularly like using corn syrup.
We don't either.
So I've suggested we use rice syrup instead.
So if you look at the date, that was 9:30. So this
How
is,
much honey are you putting in there?
we are putting in, I have to look at how much, I think it's 3/4 of a cup.
I heard this rumor if you put oil in there, it falls right out.
I think I'll try that the next time.
Okay.
It's about a cup.
Oh, this is not a cup, but just roundabout. You just follow the recipe.
So,
The recipe works to the T, right?
To the tea.
so a quart of this of honey takes 10,000 hours of flight time from bees. You know that? You
Yep.
know that, right?
And we have a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract as well. Oh, thank you. And this is our vanilla.
I normally would put the vanilla towards the end, just that.
They say to mix it all up, and if we could put the cover on that. Oh, let me put a little bit of water. And then
The
let
only
it boil.
reason I was saying that is that you don't want the vanilla to just evaporate before you got the flavor in. That was the only reason.
Okay. And I prepared the dish instead of putting butter in the dish, because this is going to be very sticky when we're done. I laced it with some parchment paper.
Grease-proof parchment paper.
Yeah, once it boils, we'll take the cover off and we'll use our candy thermometer to reach
That's
290.
290. So
We're all
I'm just
set.
stirring it and leaving it to boil. Cover it and leave it to boil
Thank you.
while we get into our next dish. Mary, it sounds like your artichoke is ready.
I'm
You
going to
need
get it
take
out of the oven,
please.
Hamsha. Yep.
So Mary has to still take that out, and then she's going to be putting some cheese and putting it right back. Right, Paul? In the meantime, you're going to have your stock going on soon, right?
Right. So for the,
This was
Let's do this real quick, Paul.
Okay.
I took it out of the oven. I'm going to put some more mozzarella cheese on.
fingers are best, you know.
I did that before. We're just going to put a few more bits of cheese on it, and I am going to put it back in the oven.
Do you cover it again?
No, because we want it to get a little brown
Brown,
for another 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'll do that right now, and you can take over from here, Paul.
There you go.
okay, so we're going to, we have these sugar pumpkins we're going to fill with soup. And we're going to start with the stock, and then we'll get the stock simmering, and then we'll put the pumpkins in the oven to warm them up. So I started with some fresh vegetables, some apple, some butternut squash, celery, carrots, and onion. And what I did was I roasted all the vegetables ahead of time, so I could instead of boiling them and having them get all soft, I prefer them to be able to have a little bit of body. So we've been boiling the stock, and now I'm just going to put the vegetables in. Now
So what we're actually making is a chunky butternut soup, right?
Right. Traditionally it's pureed, but I prefer to not have it like that. I prefer to have it be a little bit more body to it.
So how many degrees did you roast this nicely chopped up?
I roasted for like about 30 minutes,
30 minutes.
and the idea is the squash doesn't get too soft, because then it kind of falls apart, and I kind of be nice to have the texture of the squash in the soup.
How long did you put that in the oven for? About 20 minutes?
Well, closer about around 30, because I wanted to get it to be soft enough that it's cooked through, Yeah,
from this end.
sorry, I'm slow here.
No,
I'll take that from you, Paul.
All right, here we go.
Do you want to talk about the pumpkins at all, Paul?
Yeah, so these are sugar pumpkins, and what I did was I baked them a little bit ahead of time, so to save us some time for this show, and yeah, that stalks. So what we want to do is we want to have it be not too watery. We want it to be fairly chunky. What we'll do is later we'll puree a little bit of this to give it a little bit more body, and then we'll let it simmer for a little while first.
Okay.
Now I'll put the pumpkins in the oven. Now these we seeded them earlier, and then again I baked them a little bit ahead of time, and I put a little bit of salt inside. Now the flesh on the outside of the pumpkin is edible also. So when the soup sits in there, it's nice and warm, and the pumpkin is actually very tasty. So you can leave the tops off. You can put the tops on. Just for now, we'll just do it like this.
I left the top for you.
Okay, so Mary, you may want to have a look at what your syrup is looking like.
Okay, so, and we want to put that thermometer in to the
Yes,
side.
you don't want to be too hot.
Well, the thing about these candy thermometers is that they don't want it to sit on the base of the pan, and it's supposed to go up to 290.
Now the candy thermometers, traditional thermometer only goes up to 220 degrees because nothing's going to be going past boiling usually, but the sugar has to go past boiling here to make it so it sets later.
So what I like to do to make it easier is I get my nut mix and I pour it into my container.
And you were saying just about any nut mix, right?
Anything.
So what is your thermometer reading right now?
Now this is only reading 180 right now, so we do need to have it at a slow boil. And if you give it a minute, it will go up. We have to get it to where it says soft crack, which is 290. As soon as it's up there, we're going to pour it over. And what I did with the parchment paper is it tends to slide off the edge, so I just clip it and then I cut with the scissors my leftover. So we're at 220 now.
So Mary, you may want to take out your artichoke dip if 5 minutes is over.
Okay, great. Could you monitor that for me?
So to the stock, are you adding your spices?
Yes, simmering, it's getting close to where we need it to be. Now for the spices, I had a list of things. The cinnamon and the ginger give it that nice aroma. And that also we'll also add some honey to this also because again with the apples and with the squash, the honey kind of gives it a little bit more, a little bit of flavor that's really good.
For those who are watching out for the sugar intake, you don't have to put this syrup in. I mean the honey. I'm looking at syrup.
How are we doing? Temperature
I
wise?
see it only at 220 or something.
Now also thyme is
No,
one of
we
my
need
favorite herbs, so we're going to put about half of what we put together for this. Can you smell that cinnamon?
Yes.
I love that.
A fall
The
winter
ginger.
treat.
So you just want the vegetables to be soft, not too soft, but soft enough. So and the bite-sized pieces, it's easy to eat, but it's still very satisfying with the big pieces. Will this go a little longer?
Okay, so our candy thermometer is now reading in the 280 mark, 280, 290, which is a soft crack. So I'm going to take the thermometer out. I'm going to hand that to you, Hamsha. Thank you. I'm going to grab the spatula, and I'm going to pour this onto my candy. And I'm going to mix a little bit.
You can only smell the...
So
It smells very sticky. And then this is going into the oven at 325 for about 15 minutes. Could you open it? Thank you.
All right, so the soup, we're going to continue. Looks like it's getting to be texture's getting pretty good. We want it to be soft, but not too mushy. We want the texture to be just right. So we'll take we'll blend some of this. We don't want to puree the whole thing, but we'll puree enough, we don't want the thyme in there. Puree enough to give it some body, even though that broth is pretty good and it's in pretty good shape. So I'm going to blend some of the...
You blending is right.
So now we'll put that in with our
See,
broth.
other people may put some flour or corn flour to thicken their soup, but Paul is making his using his vegetables to thicken his soup, correct?
That's right.
I don't like to use
Flour.
flour.
It has, it's good for some things, for thickening, but the soup, having the pureed part of it gives it, I don't know, the flavor's all there and there's no added anything. I mean, it might look a little funny though. So the pumpkins, so I can put the pumpkins, I can take them out now and I can fill them and put them back in the oven.
Yes, you will see. the
Let's
next
do
one.
that.
And then we'll start with the mushrooms.
Everything is very hot.
Yep, should be. So now we'll just do is, the fun part is to make it real messy, is to fill up the pumpkins. So they're hot enough, yep, very hot. Fill these up. If you spill a little bit, that's okay.
That's the name of the game, right?
Right. If you can't make a mess, then you don't have any fun. Yep. Now, the thyme piece is in there, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything.
Just gives it more flavor.
Yeah. Yeah, so I estimated each pumpkin holds about 2 cups.
Yep.
All right?
No,
That's
we're fine.
Yep. Right.
And I will get it back
Into the oven.
into the oven.
All right. And I'll start on the mushrooms. Now, they don't really have to cook, but
It's
it's
just
nice
to keep it hot.
keep it hot. And now, next thing, I need a spoon. So you don't have to gill the mushrooms really, but I like it gilled. Well, if I cut them this way, I don't gill them. But if I'm going to make them in a stuffed mushroom like this, I like to have the gills out because I like the flavor of the mushroom, but it's a little bit dark, and I like to have the flavor brightened up a little bit. So you'll notice in the filling, you'll notice there's some lime juice and there's balsamic vinegar, which is
On the mushroom.
on the mushrooms to kind of brighten up the flavor. And then there's some more spicy things like cumin and paprika to give a little bit of bite. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting together the filling for the mushrooms. Now, so these mushrooms I cooked already, and you start with
the oven, right? What was the temperature you put in the oven?
the oven could be any temperature. If it's 350 or 400, depending on what else you're cooking, it just changes the amount of time you have to be there. It doesn't have to cook all the way through, but you cook it the dome side up first, like 10 to 15 minutes, and then flip it around, and then that's when you would fill it. So what I'll do is I'm going to warm these up now, and while I'm making the filling, and
we marinated this last
Right.
night in the balsamic
Yeah.
and
It was marinated last night, and now I was just putting it in the oven.
Okay.
And it was
Right.
cooked also.
right,
But
and all the
it was cooked previously.
right, and then it has the marinade had a lot of like as I said, the balsamic vinegar, lime juice, cumin, chili powder, paprika, and I think we left out the salt. And so for the filling, what I did first was I sautéed some peppers and onions, and red pepper and onion. I like that. So I'll get that going. And I also put the spices that are mentioned in the recipe. Now, since if you were cooking this from scratch, you would basically cook this first. Then you would end up adding the quinoa to it, which we cooked the quinoa. We just made it very plain, just boiled it very plain. Don't need to put anything in there really, because there'll be enough flavor in this once we put all the ingredients in. Next, we'll put the spinach. That will give us a nice green color. And
So you're just wilting the spinach, right?
sorry, yeah,
You just wilt the spinach.
right, because you don't really have to cook this very much anyway, because we're going to put this in the oven.
So this is a very, very, very high protein dish with your beans and your quinoa and your spinach.
Right.
It's a very good, well balanced, very good for people that are on a big diet.
We're going to let this sit for a few minutes. We'll put the beans in also, and we'll put the cover on just to wilt the spinach a little bit. And then when the mushrooms come out, we'll fill those. There we go. Now the beans, you can use black beans, white beans. In this case, we're using brown beans,
Pinto beans.
pinto beans. They,
Paul, did you want to put the garlic in?
yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to
garlic
put that
will
in
make
a-
nice feeling, but
yeah, I usually do, but this time I didn't do it like that because I forgot.
I'll remember.
Okay.
While you were doing that, I took the peanut brittle out of the oven and It's sitting here. I'm going to let it sit. It has to sit and
It gets cool.
cool, and it takes a while, at least an hour
then
or
you would
so.
start breaking
And
it
then
up
I
and-
would cut it up and break it up, and we have a demonstration of that over there for later.
The mushrooms you can tell are just about cooked through. You can see the juice, and you can see the texture, and see how nice and juicy they are. You definitely don't want to lose that, because that gives a lot of flavor. Since there's already been some spices put in there. I'm just getting ready to put this on. And what we'll do is we'll put this on the top, because the spinach is going to cook, and even if it doesn't, it's still really, that's the best way to have it anyway. Kind of burned on a little bit. It's okay.
Spilling a little is okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Now you want this to be mounded really well, because it's not really going to cook down very much, but it's again, this makes the blend of flavors is better if it's mounded. If you only have a little bit, it tastes like mostly mushroom, you won't get all the flavor you want.
And it looks very festive.
Yeah,
Yes, you
Yeah.
got red, green, and white.
that's right. That's right.
We didn't plan that, did we?
I know. Well, kind of. You got to have. I always try to balance the colors. Always have some green in everything if I can, because
Green is good.
Yeah, green's good. All right.
So in order to minimize work at home, you can actually line this tin with greaseproof paper.
Oh, parchment.
Yeah.
That's right.
we do that. We did some of that. Now what I'm going to do is, because this is all kind of cooked, really I'm just going to cook it all together afterwards. So it kind of burned out a little bit. I'm just going to. I usually we do sliced tomatoes, but we
chop them instead this time.
we chop them this time.
You had some external help, and that's okay.
That's right. Because a little less messy with that, but that's okay. And then, yep, we're good. So the tomatoes, they brighten up that flavor. And if it's a little bit messy, that's good, because you want it to look. It doesn't want to look too perfect, because engineers want to everything look square and round, but I don't like it like that. All right, I'm using my fingers. Good thing they're clean. Perfection is not what we're looking for here. We just want to make sure there's enough to give it a little bit of flavor on the top. And once this cooks down, you'll see it looks pretty good. It's good to have all this help, pointing out the empty areas and everything. Right, everything's cooked already, so we don't have to. Whoa, that's close.
Okay,
All
we
I
can
really
cut
want to do is
for a
melt the
minute.
cheese. These pumpkins are pretty hot, and you don't want to spill them everywhere. Oh, there we go. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? We'll put the top on first. Oh, there we go.
Put it on top of it. Okay.
Yep. Oh, one more. There. Now serve the mushroom. You want to do it?
Sure. I'm going to hand that to you.
Oh, you wanted to really do this, right?
That's right. Now put a little bit of garnish on there, just so it looks nice.
Here's your garnish.
There we go.
And if we want to show that the peanut brittle,
This is a completed peanut brittle,
but it's still very hot.
very hot, so it's not going to be able to break very easily. You may be able to cut them at this stage with a grease knife. You may be able to cut them and score them, so when you break them, it comes absolute squares.
Right.
But
But
this
we
is-
didn't absolute do that last
Yeah.
night, so we made a little bit of a breakage of some that I made last night. And then for decoration, we put a little bit of
Yes, making it more festive, we just sprinkle a little bit of powdered sugar. And
Just
if
a little.
somebody's watching the sugar quantity, you don't have to. But the other syrups, you had the healthy syrups in there, right? You have rice
Yes.
syrup, you have honey, and you have nice mixed nuts.
that's it.
There's no refined sugar or anything, and that looks perfect.
Okay, and then
So
our
we start off very nicely. We have our appetizer, our very, very nutritious, wholesome main meal, which will keep you full for a long
for a
time.
while. Yeah.
And then we have our dessert.
Okay.
So this is our kale and
Artichoke?
artichoke dip, which we have very nice sweet potato crackers to go with,
Any kind of.
any kind. Yes, a sort of a gluten-free diet. This is,
Right.
think about it, I think we've got gluten-free right here.
Right, no flour in the thickening.
Yes, you
That's
you
right.
do the vegetables in the thickening, and
Right.
you had quinoa for the to make the,
The grain.
bulk of that
Yeah.
mushroom, and no flour whatsoever.
No?
Right.
So here we go, a very nice, healthy Christmas meal. If you're thinking of cutting out dairy, you could do that
Take the
by
cheese
just
out.
vegan. And you know, thank you so much, Paul and Mary.
Bon appetit. Thank you.
Merry Christmas to both of you.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Merry Christmas.
holidays,
Thank you.
yes. And from Flavourful Eats, you remember we're always online, www.actontv.org, Flavourful Eats, on YouTube. And if any questions, comments, please write to flavorfuleats@gmail.com. From Paul, Mary, Hamsha, your host. Till we meet again, bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care.
All right.